Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something that is, I think, both universally relatable and deeply unsettling. It's the architecture of the perfectly one-sided relationship.
Mm.
It's that chilling feeling when you realize you haven't just met someone who's a bit selfish, but someone who has actively engineered the whole dynamic to be purely extractive.
And it's that feeling of being perpetually drained, but you can't quite put your finger on where the leak is. That's precisely what we're going to try and illuminate today.
Right.
Our source material is really fascinating for this. It's a set of in-depth anecdotal psychological profiles, basically personal observations that detail the strategic behaviors of individuals with some strong, conscious, antisocial, and exploitative traits.
And we're looking at a few specific cases, right? The sources name them: Ira, David, Pasha, and Galia.
That's right. And we should be really clear here, this isn't about formal clinical diagnoses.
No, absolutely not.
These are observations of calculated, consistent relational behavior. It's almost like a roadmap of how certain personalities can weaponize trust to maintain, total dominance.
So our mission today for this deep dive is to strip away the generic labels like narcissist or user and really understand the specific levers of control that they pull.
Exactly. We're going way beyond just calling someone a user. We need to unpack the motivations. I mean, why do they operate this way? We'll get into the profound paradox of their development, especially this character, David.
Oh, that part is fascinating. He grew up in an environment of complete trust, only to become a master of deceit.
Right. And crucially, we're going to define the specific destructive emotional transaction that makes these relationships uniquely catastrophic for the targets, who the source sometimes calls Chuck. Our goal here is to make the invisible mechanics of exploitation, visible.
Okay, let's get into it. Let's unpack this profile, starting with the core traits we see in figures like Ira and David. The sources suggest there's this foundational characteristic that they're, in some sense, born with.
Yeah, a character type that's suggested to be partially genetic.
So what does that really look like in their day-to-day life, that predisposition?
Well, it mainly shows up as an absolute fundamental unwillingness to cooperate, not in the true sense of the word anyway.
Eating.
They do not want to do things together if that means shared effort or shared risk or, mutual benefit. Their objective is never, ever partnership.
It's control.
It is always hierarchical control. They seek to be the leader, the manager, the conductor of the orchestra, which means everyone else is just an instrument to be played. The second a situation calls for genuine mutual contribution, their interest just evaporates.
And it's not just about being the boss. It's about making sure the entire operation, the whole relationship, functions exclusively for their benefit and without them having to pay the price of real effort.
Exactly. And this non-cooperation is wrapped up in something the source calls a partially secret life.
Okay, what does that secrecy mean? What's it telling us about their intentions?
It means their public face and their internal math are completely different. These are not just flawed people making honest mistakes.
No.
They are consistently operating with a hidden, high-level agenda. Every single interaction, every relationship is secretly aimed at extracting some kind of advantage. It could be financial, emotional, social, even just logistical.
The secrecy isn't about, hiding an affair.
Not at all. It's about concealing the true, self-serving, calculative nature of the relationship itself. They need the relationship to look normal from the outside.
So the extraction can just keep going undetected.
Precisely.
And that brings us to the ultimate goal. If they're constantly calculating, what is the profit they're actually after? I think most people would assume it's money or favors, but the sources point to something deeper, something more profound for David and Ira.
Absolutely. I mean, of course, tangible gain is always welcome, but the underlying drive is often just pure relational dominance. The core purpose is the psychological victory.
To win.
To win, to overcome, or just to be above other people. This is where they get their deepest satisfaction. They actually derive power from changing the thoughts of the victim.
How so?
If they can convince you that white is black or that your favorite hobby is, foolish, they see that mental shift as a victory. It's a direct, verifiable gain in power over your mind.
That is a really crucial distinction for anyone trying to understand this.
Yeah.
It's not just about what they can take from you materially.
No.
It's the power they get from altering your personal reality.
Mm-hmm.
They don't just want you to give them a ride in your car. They want you to believe your old car was a terrible choice and that the one they recommended is the only smart decision.
Exactly.
Huh.
And to establish this dominance, they engage in, well, proactive destruction. They spend a lot of time actively devaluing, humiliating, and even poisoning the existing relationships of their friends and family.
Why do that?
Because a victim with a strong, supportive network is mentally resilient. They have other perspectives, other people to check in with.
Right, that support network is basically intellectual and emotional competition. If you have a stable life, good friends, respected mentors, a family you trust, that stability is a direct threat to the exploiter's absolute need for dominance.
And so they strategically poison those outside relationships. It can be very subtle, undermining you to your friends or casting doubt on your family's motives. Over time, they erode your resilience.
Which makes you more vulnerable.
More vulnerable, and most importantly, more reliant on the exploiter as the only source of validation and truth. The more isolated you become, the greater their power.
And here's where their internal perspective gets so fascinating. The source suggests David and Ira are completely aware of this calculation they're making.
Oh, completely.
There's that story about David at age 18. He openly talks about a character survey he took that labeled him a psychopath. And he just confirms it. He says, I'm a little bit psychopath.
And that self-identification, it's not a confession of guilt. It's almost like a statement of personal achievement. It confirms the behavior isn't just some unconscious reaction.
It's strategic.
It is strategic, and it is accepted. They see these cunning, often despicable qualities in each other. They recognize their mutual talent for manipulation.
But the way they frame this knowledge to the rest of the world is the real manipulative genius.
Mm-hmm.
They take this internal realization, we are highly self-interested strategists, and they project it onto everybody. They claim that all people are like that.
And that projection is the perfect defense mechanism, because if everyone is secretly a self-interested manipulator, then their own behavior isn't monstrous.
It's just smart.
It's just savvy observation and successful adaptation. It positions Ira and David as uniquely clever, as enlightened actors, while everyone else, your mother, your best friend, your colleague, is just an unwitting, failed version of the same selfish creature. It completely normalizes their exploitation.
Which brings us to this profound irony that we have to emphasize. Despite this absolutely ruthless strategy, they need friends. They require people they can trust and extract support from.
They do.
But they maintain this strict, non-negotiable policy of zero reciprocity.
They view loyalty and friendship not as a two-way street, but as a resource pipeline. They want to receive support, empathy, time, and friendship. But they absolutely refuse to be a friend or a provider of support.
Their operational motto, as the source makes so clear, is we only want to use, exploit, manage, and isolate.
They're demanding a resource trust that their own behavior is actively destroying.
So if the currency of a functional relationship is trust and effort, they're making sure the exchange rate is permanently set at zero in the victim's favor.
That's a perfect way to put it. They recognize the immense value of trust, but they refuse to participate in the mutual effort necessary to sustain that trust for anyone else. It's the ultimate parasitic model.
So if that ultimate goal is dominance, the first tactical step has to be eliminating any threats to that dominance.
Yes, and that brings us to strategic isolation. This isn't just, drifting apart from a friend. This is a calculated, proactive, almost campaign-level process of separating the victim Chuck from their entire support network.
It really sounds like military strategy applied to a social life. The source says they systematically cut out friends, teachers, colleagues, bosses, any useful contact the target has. How do they even do that without making the target immediately suspicious?
Well, it's often gradual, and it's usually masked as concern. It might start with subtle critiques. I'm not sure your colleague really respects you, or, your teacher's methods seem a little outdated.
So they're injecting skepticism.
They inject skepticism about the reliability or the motives of the victim's allies. And over time, they create friction. They might manufacture small crises or conflicts that force the victim to choose between the exploiter and that outside contact.
And the victim, who is probably operating under the assumption of good faith, often sides with the person who claims to be their closest confidant, which is the exploiter.
Precisely. And the ultimate stated goal from the source material is just chillingly clear. It's to ensure the target is isolated and has only Ira or only David in their life.
It creates a psychological vacuum.
A total vacuum. When you're isolated, the exploiter becomes the sole arbiter of your external reality. They're the only source of emotional feedback, the single point of reference for everything.
So once they've cleared the field through isolation, that's when the real mental attack begins. The source talks about how this character type can eat into your brains and wash your brains. How does this brainwashing, this erosion of confidence, actually work on a psychological level?
The mechanism relies very heavily on the sheer power of fake confidence.
Yeah, confidence.
If you're isolated, you lose that external validation. So when the exploiter speaks, they do so with absolute, unshakable authority. And this is often used to create massive cognitive dissonance in the victim.
So the victim knows their own reality.
They know their own reality, but the exploiter's confident assertion is so absolute, it forces the victim to start questioning their own perceptions.
So that confidence is like a hammer, just continuously striking the victim's sense of self-trust until it finally cracks. It's not about logic.
No, it's about persistent, authoritative delivery. And the source gives us these specific, everyday examples that are profound because they're so banal. They show how dominance is achieved over the smallest preferences.
Like the activity shift.
Yes, let's take that. You might be a consistent yoga practitioner. You know it's beneficial for you. You've been doing it for years. It's part of your identity.
But the manipulator, using that overwhelming fake confidence, convinces you that yoga is ineffective, maybe even damaging, and that you should now be doing Pilates instead.
And the key insight here, the thing you have to understand, is that the exploiter doesn't care one bit about yoga or Pilates.
No.
They care that they successfully overwrote your existing belief and redirected your effort toward their preference. They weaponize your own conscientiousness against you. If you're a dedicated person, you'll throw yourself into the new activity that they mandated.
And this goes for basic preferences too, like the car example. You drive a reliable Toyota. It's a choice you made based on years of research and personal preference.
And they convince you, maybe by devaluing your competence, only people who don't know anything about cars drive Toyotas, that you should actually be driving a Honda.
The subject matter, Toyota versus Honda, is totally irrelevant.
Totally irrelevant. The gain for the exploiter is the alteration of your mind. They see this as a measurable victory. I changed what they thought, therefore I overcame them. It validates their superior standing and reinforces their position as the intellectual authority in your life.
And this brings us back to the source's really nuanced conclusion on where this behavior comes from. It's described as partially genetic, partially consciously chosen strategy. If they already have a disposition for this, why is the conscious choice of strategy so critical to understand?
Because the strategy is the optimization. It's how they perfect it. They recognized early on that pure cooperation is, in their words, unprofitable for achieving maximum personal gain.
So it's a business decision.
It is. If they were purely driven by genetics, their behavior might be more erratic. But the fact that they can systematically isolate, brainwash, and extract resources confirms they are making a conscious, strategic decision to go down this path.
And they stick to it because it works. It gives them advantages, dominance, control, resource extraction, and they are simply unwilling to abandon a successful, high-yield strategy.
Why would they? Why cooperate when exploitation is demonstrably more advantageous for their personal balance sheet? They've chosen the path of least resistance for themselves, no matter what chaos it inflicts on everybody else.
I want to dig into David's story a bit more, because the analysis of him raises one of the most intellectually compelling paradoxes in the source material.
Oh yes, the question of how he developed this ruthless worldview in what was, by all accounts, the most nurturing environment imaginable.
He grew up in what the source literally calls fertile ground. He was surrounded by people who embodied high levels of cooperation, individuals who genuinely invested in others, thought about the collective good.
And were often willing to suppress their own interests for the sake of the family or the greater whole.
Right. And this created a profoundly safe atmosphere. David was allowed to grow and develop without constantly having to look over his shoulder for deception or betrayal. He had this foundational security blanket provided by a network of truly altruistic people, his mother, his grandmother, family friends, who all operated under a consistent code of trust and mutual support.
It really is the optimal environment for healthy development. But this is where the devastating turn happens. Despite receiving this massive emotional and psychological investment, David's self-serving genetics and strategy took over later on. He used the safety of that environment as a platform to draw a truly malicious conclusion about the people in it.
What was that conclusion?
He concluded that everyone else, the very people who nurtured him, acts only out of self-interest, but that they're just doing a really bad job of hiding it.
That is a remarkable, almost hostile cognitive distortion.
It is. He internalizes the generosity and support he received not as proof of human goodwill, but as proof that he is a golden boy who is owed this service, and that anyone engaging in genuine cooperation must be either naive.
Or they're secretly planning a deception that he needs to get ahead of.
Exactly. He essentially looked at his incredibly supportive family and concluded that their normal, friendly cooperation was actually a massive, poorly executed form of deception, and that it was unprofitable.
He sees a lack of self-prioritization as a weakness or a strategic failure.
That's it. So his resolution was to only ever act when it brings him direct, verifiable benefit. He places his interests first and treats the world as a system that is designed to serve him.
And this is where the societal implication becomes so stark. The source points out that if everyone had behaved this way when he was developing, if everyone had prioritized their own interests above his emotional and developmental needs, he would have been a complete failure.
He would be working at Dunkin' Donuts or sitting at home on the computer, as the source puts it. His entire ability to execute this high-level, profitable exploitation strategy relies entirely on the vast majority of people not using his strategy.
He's structurally dependent on the very ecosystem of trust that he dedicates his life to undermining.
It is the ultimate parasitic relationship. The parasite needs a healthy host to survive, yet their very presence sickens the host.
That concept really sets up a crucial comparison the sources make. They also profile another character, Pasha, who is identified as a pathological narcissist and an emotional sadist. Those are harsh labels.
Very harsh. But the source makes a fundamental distinction between Pasha and the others. Pasha is described as stable.
Stable. Stability is the critical axis of treachery here.
Yes. With Pasha, you know what you are dealing with. He might be manipulative, he might steal small amounts. The source mentions him stealing $20 just for the excitement of the risk. But he doesn't necessarily lie about the important things. His malicious, narcissistic character is right there, up front.
His actions are predictable.
Predictable within his malicious framework. He is the visible viper. If you approached Pasha, you know you are taking a risk, and you can try to mitigate it.
But with David and Ira, the risk is concealed.
And that's the key distinction. David and Ira deceive and conceal their bad deeds. The victim doesn't know what to expect and therefore cannot rely on them at all. Pasha is predictably harmful, which makes him, paradoxically, less destructive than the treacherous, unpredictable betrayal delivered by David and Ira, who mask their intent beneath a convincing facade of friendship.
The stability allows for some kind of psychological coping. Treachery just dismantles your reality.
It does. And this treachery manifests in the complete breakdown of transactional behavior. It's not just a philosophical difference. We see it in these mundane, concrete examples of non-reciprocity.
Let's look at the core example because it perfectly illustrates the zero-sum transactional logic.
Okay, yes. So the host invested significant personal time and physical effort helping to fix David's car, which required mechanical expertise. That is a clear deposit of capital time, effort, specialized knowledge into the relationship.
In a normal relationship, that would be seen as a debt or at least a foundation for future mutual aid.
You'd think so. But when the opportunity arose for David to reciprocate the help, say, when the host had their own car trouble, David showed absolutely zero interest. The transaction was over the moment David received the benefit. The debt was immediately erased from his internal ledger.
And the ride example takes this coldness and elevates it into pure strategy.
Yes, so the host provided David rides when he could have easily taken an Uber, absorbing the cost and inconvenience himself. This is a common gesture of friendship. You do it for people you care about.
Of course.
But when the host needed a ride, and we're talking about being stranded with a flat tire, in genuine need of assistance, David's response was immediate and frigid.
He demanded the host take an Uber. He explicitly stated, "I won't take you. It's not profitable for me."
Just think about the emotional impact of that statement. It dismantles any illusion that the past rides were based on affection or mutual support.
It confirms they were just leverage for David's convenience.
Exactly. The exploiter's calculation is laid bare. Others invest in them, time, money, physical labor, emotional support, and they, in turn, refuse to invest in others. This makes the arrangement twice as profitable for the exploiter because they get all the gain without ever incurring the cost of reciprocation or any future liability.
The profound question that keeps coming up for me is, how do they even manage to ensnare loyal, generous people into such an obviously one-sided deal in the first place?
It all starts with the setup, the lure of false interest.
What does that look like?
Well, the initial phase is brilliant in its targeted flattery. The manipulator, whether it's David or Galia in these sources, presents themselves as being deeply interested in your life. They don't just exchange pleasantries, they shower you with specific, tailored compliments.
Boosting your self-esteem, creating an immediate bond.
Right, a bond of perceived mutual admiration. That intense focus must feel incredibly validating. It's that feeling of finally being truly seen and understood by someone new.
And that feigned interest, it quickly becomes something else.
It transforms into aggressive reconnaissance. They become intensely focused on every single aspect of your life. Your job, your housing, your car, your hobbies, your friends, your family. This isn't friendly curiosity, this is intelligence gathering.
They're mapping the target's ecosystem.
They're mapping it to identify resource streams, emotional vulnerabilities, and potential points of control. They need to understand the structural integrity of your life before they can start dismantling it and restructuring it entirely around their own needs.
Okay, so once the relationship is established, let's detail the demand side. What are the emotional resources they're actually extracting? It sounds like a constant, heavy drain.
It is. They demand perpetual attention, praise, unwavering support, a safe atmosphere where they can operate without any criticism, and just vast amounts of emotional energy.
It's not enough to just be present. The source says the victim is expected to scan the exploiter. What does scanning even entail in this dynamic?
It means you're expected to intuitively anticipate the exploiter's shifting needs and moods, to adjust your own behavior instantly, and to proactively provide emotional support without ever being asked.
Wow.
You're required to take on their emotional weight, absorbing their anxieties, their grievances, their toxicity, without interfering or offering any corrective feedback. You become a non-interfering emotional sink.
And you have to provide perpetual admiration while they show off their perceived successes in front of you.
That's right. You are essentially performing constant, high-level emotional labor, and it's unacknowledged, unappreciated, and profoundly exhausting. The exploiter treats your attention like an oxygen supply they just breathe without thinking.
And what is the return on this massive, continuous investment?
The source is stark. They return humiliation, shaming, dominance, and a relentless demonstration of their own superiority. They do not praise you. They certainly do not pay you sustained attention.
They establish this radical, oppressive needs hierarchy. On one side, their own needs are portrayed as utterly central and very important.
They are the heroes of labor, always busy, always sacrificing, and therefore they deserve universal sympathy, deference, and service.
And on the flip side, your needs are entirely thrown away. Your efforts are actively disrespected. If you're struggling, the manipulator demonstrates an active refusal to even engage,
Stating they do not even want to hear about the victim's problems. It's a pure emotional fortress. All support flows inward to the exploiter. Absolutely none flows outward to the source of that support.
This transactional asymmetry, it quickly formalizes itself into the actual structure of the exploiter's social unit, doesn't it? The source describes how they define their family or their core friend group to maximize intake and minimize any responsibility.
Yeah, they create what the source calls a transactional fortress.
A fortress.
They consciously put up a fence or a wall around the family unit, and this wall operates under a non-negotiable set of rules that governs any external interaction.
And the rule governing that wall is the ultimate articulation of one-sidedness. Our business is your business, but your business is not our business.
It means you are expected to be intimately involved in and responsible for the well-being, the success, the drama of the exploiter's life. But the moment you require care or attention or intervention for your own problems, that wall goes right up.
They loudly claim support and friendship on words, using the language of loyalty and community.
But their practical strategy is one of relentless strategic rivalry.
Strategic rivalry. That suggests the target is always in a secondary, competitive role, even if they don't know they're competing.
Exactly. The exploiter views their core group as a factory or a palace that must function solely to produce benefits for them.
In this rivalry, it manifests through tactical exclusion.
All the time. They will take vacations, throw elaborate parties, coordinate major life events with their own internal network of family and friends without ever coordinating with or inviting you. They simply proceed with whatever benefits them, regardless of your emotional investment or desire to be included.
The emotional cost of this rivalry becomes so painfully clear during those shared experience exchanges, like showing photos from a trip.
Oh, yes. They demand admiration for their own successes. Look at my photos, they'll command. Admire me standing on the mountain. It's a requirement for you to confirm their superiority.
But if you try to reciprocate, if you try to show photos from your own success or your own vacation, your own happy moment,
The manipulator immediately becomes upset. They will actively exclude your experience, sometimes saying something startlingly revealing like, "Don't show us, we didn't have as much fun as you did."
So the narrative must remain focused exclusively on the exploiter's importance.
Always. They drain emotional support from you, but when you attempt to find mutual support or share a moment of joy, they slam the door, ensuring you remain isolated and secondary.
And beyond the emotional abuse, they show this profound disrespect for your time and your basic boundaries. They often use logistics and convenience as a form of manipulation.
This is where the specific anecdotes really anchor the concept of boundary destruction.
Let's dedicate some time to the tram example, because it demonstrates the exploiter's total disregard for sunk costs. It's just unbelievable.
It really is. So the host traveled for 2 hours, a significant commitment of time and physical effort, to visit David at his home using public transit.
And upon finally arriving, probably exhausted from the 2-hour journey.
He's told that David was grounded and couldn't leave the house. The critical analysis here is the response of the parents and David. There was zero sense of responsibility, zero apology for the host's wasted 4-hour round trip.
It's an incredible boundary violation. Their internal, private decision about punishment took absolute precedence over the host's clear commitment.
They showed no consideration for his effort, revealing that in the exploiter's ecosystem, your time has no value when it conflicts with their convenience or even the convenience of their parents.
And we see this mirrored with Galia and the gym. It's another manipulation disguised as helpful advice.
Right. Galia promotes her local gym as being highly advantageous to the host, implicitly demanding the host spend substantial travel time and potentially change their entire routine to join her convenient facility.
But when the host suggests that Galia join their own convenient gym instead,
The refusal is direct and explicitly strategic. It is not profitable for her to travel there.
this is deceptive communication at its finest. They package their convenience as your benefit.
They do. They imply that what optimizes life for the exploiter must, by definition, be the best choice for you. They leverage the slight possibility of partial convenience for you to mask the fundamental, dishonest requirement that you prioritize their logistical interests. A normal friend says, "Join my gym, it's great."
An exploiter says, join my gym, and if you don't, you are actively failing to optimize your life.
Precisely.
So this whole strategy, it culminates in this final destructive phase. The exploiter weaponizes your own positive traits, all the things that make you a good person, your loyalty, your trust, your faithfulness, your conscientiousness, they're all turned against you.
Those positive qualities become the very chains that enforce the one-sided relationship. Your loyalty keeps you from leaving. Your conscientiousness ensures you keep providing the emotional labor. And your trust prevents you from seeing the cold calculation hiding beneath the mask.
And if that extraction fails, if you finally push back, or the well just runs dry, the exploiter pivots instantly.
To pure destruction. They seek to ruin your job, your friends, your family, your car, your home. The exploiter moves from extraction to sabotage, because if they can't profit from you, they will gain dominance by ensuring no one else can either.
Wow, okay. So let's bring this all back to you, the learner. We've defined a very specific, very dangerous profile here.
We have, and the essential takeaways, I think, are structured around recognition. First, you have to understand that this behavior is often rooted in a combination of predisposition and a conscious, profitable strategy. They know what they're doing.
And their actions are rationalized. They conclude that everyone else is acting out of self-interest anyway, so they're just better at it.
Yeah. Right. Second, you have to recognize the crucial difference between predictable exploitation, like the visible malice of Pasha, and the far more treacherous, concealed exploitation of an Ira or a David.
Treachery means you can't rely on their mask, and you certainly can't rely on their friendship.
And that unpredictability is the most toxic element. And finally, the emotional transaction itself is entirely measurable. It begins with flattery and reconnaissance. It extracts all your available emotional labor, your support, your admiration, the scanning and absorbing of toxicity.
And it returns only shaming, dominance, and a complete dismissal of your own problems.
Understanding those specific mechanics is the shield. It's what allows you to identify and exit the relationship early.
So what does this all mean for you? Recognizing the mechanisms, the strategic isolation, the language of faked confidence overriding your reality, the weaponization of your own good character, and that cold refusal of reciprocity. It helps you move beyond simply feeling confused or guilty. It helps you understand the precise mechanics of why you were used. And that knowledge, it shifts the power dynamic back into your hands.
And we'll leave you with a final thought drawn directly from the source's observation on David. The entire success of the exploiter is utterly dependent on the world not using their methods. If strategic rivalry, isolation, and zero reciprocity became the universal norm, their own ability to extract profit would immediately vanish.
Because there would be no supportive environment left to parasitize.
Exactly. And this raises an important question for you to think about. What fundamental structural benefits does universal trust provide? Benefits that we often take for granted. And how dependent is exploitative behavior on the very cooperative ecosystem it seeks to destroy? Something for you to ponder as you navigate your own social landscape.